Hello, I'm Adam Riley, and I'm going to be solving prepping data week 25 in Enso with you. So this week we're looking at some complaints data. And I've actually looked at this one already, and it's some date time. So worth saying, date times are always tricky to work with, and today is no exception. But we'll run through how it goes. So as usual, I've got the data set up in Enso in a starting project for us, and I've pasted the instructions over here into Enso so you can see them there. So we've got two inputs. We've got complaint status table and we've got a product lookup table. Both of these are sheets in this Excel workbook. So first thing we need to do is input the data and split the complaint description field into, so we've got product ID, issue type, and complaint description. So let's put a read component in, and let's get that complaints data table reading in. Okay, so we need to split the complaints description. So if we go across here, okay, so complaints description. So it's got this three parts to it by the looks of things. So we've got, I need to get a bit more space on this last column. There we go. Okay, so we've got separated by, got this code, then we've got space hyphen space, and then we've got a colon space and this last bit. So I think we need a couple of splitter columns here. So split the column, and it's the complete description, and the first limiter is a space hyphen space. So if we take a look at that, so that's split that first code off, and then we can do it again on complete description 2. So again, split the columns, this time complete description 2, and I believe the colon was the delimiter was a colon and a space character. So again, let's take a look. That's looking good. So we've got the code, we've got the issue type is that, and then the complete description itself. So let's close these up to keep tidy as we work, and let's put a rename in to rename these three fields so we can keep track of them as we go down. So rename columns, so complaint description 1, I believe that is the product ID, looking at this, so I'll copy that in there. Then we've got this complaint description 2.1, that looks like the issue type, so again copy that, pop it in there, and finally we have this field which is the complete description itself. So again, I'll copy that, paste it in there. Again, let's close this up, pull this up, just check that's got what we expected. So coming across to the right hand side, product ID, issue type, complete description. Looking good. Okay, so extract the first two letters of the product ID as this represents the category code. So we can do that using a set component. And to get the left, we can do a simple expression. So we can say from the product ID, take the text left, and we want 2, and this is the product ID field. So again, copy that, paste it in there. So there we have product ID. Oh no, it's not product ID, that's overwritten my old category code, so right. Let's rename that. That's why it's good to check as you work. Okay, so we've still got the product ID, and now we've got the category code here on the right hand side. So now we can use this category code to join on the product category from the lookup table. So if we pull in the category table here, categories, and oh, so that's interesting. The category table. So first of all, it's got a header row. So let's tell that. So, but it hasn't actually got a lookup. Right. So is it the first two characters? Let's just. So if I do a quick aggregate on this data here, I can group by that category code that I created, and we can have a quick look at the values. Okay, yeah, so it looks like the category code is the first two letters of the category. So we need to create that same category code on the lookup table to actually make it into a lookup table, and then we can use that to join on. So we can get rid of that one. So again, very similar. We'll do a set, do a simple expression from the product category field, text left, the length of 2, and again we'll call that category code. Okay, you notice the case doesn't match, but that's fine because in Enso we're able to do a case insensitive join. So if I come down here, do a join, that's the right side, and join kind is inner on equals ignore case and category code. Okay, so if I take a look, if we go across to the right hand side, yep, we've now got a product category. Still got 100 rows, which is what we had before. So we haven't gained or dropped any rows. We've got this right category code that we don't need, so we can now drop that. So remove columns, right category code, just to clean that up. Okay, so then the next thing is to filter the data set to only contain rows where the date resolves happens after the date received. So I'm just going to group everything I've done so far up to sort of keep the working area clean. So I'm going to move that one up there so we can see the data that's coming at the top. I'm going to select all of these components, and then up at the top here I'm going to hit the group selected components button. That's going to group it up, and then we can just rename that to clean and append categories. There we go. So that's just grouped all that up to keep our working space clean. So the next challenge is we've got to filter data only keep rows where the date resolves happened after the date received. So the problem we have here is you'll notice we have a mixed date format in coming in from Excel. So we've got some dates that are coming in this format and some dates that are coming in this format. And at this point it's worth going back to the source data just to see what's going on here. So if I click back, and here is the source data just opened up in Google Sheets, and we can see in fact, yeah, in the Excel file the dates are in a different format. So where you can see this is the alignment of the cells. So these cells that are right aligned are actually dates in Excel, and so when we read those into Enso they get read in as dates, and so we render them in Enso's internal date format, which is year, month, day. These are currently in Excel as strings, so these are going to need to be passed into dates. So we need to tell Enso what the format is for these particular dates. So these ones look to be in US date format, so it's month, day, year format. So it's a little bit tricky because we've got two different formats in one column that we're going to deal with. So if we've got one format to pass in Enso, that's a fairly easy operation. Having two is slightly trickier, and I'll show you how we're going to deal with that. So first thing I'd like to do is deal with them all at once. So I've got two fields. Rather than having to deal with the two fields at once, I'm going to transpose them all into a single column, and then we can deal with those in one go. So if I do a transpose, and key column is complaint ID, so that puts all of the fields into the name and the values. I just want to deal with the date field, so I'm just going to put a select columns component here, and I'm just going to select complaint ID, date received, date resolved, and I'm going to use that into my transpose. So now you can see I've just got date received, date resolved for all the complaint IDs and all of these mixed formats. So if it was a single format, I could just add a parse column here. As they're mixed, I'm going to need to do a little bit of extra work and create an extra copy. So first thing to do is cast them. So the minute they're mixed between strings and dates, I'm going to cast them all into char fields. So now they're all strings ready to be passed, and I'm going to create a copy of that value field using the set component again. So set component, we can do a simple expression from that value, and then there's an operation that's just copy, and that just creates a second copy of that. So we've got value and we've got value copy. I'm going to call it value 2 just to. Okay, so now I've got those. I'm going to pass the value column using the one date format. I'm going to pass the value 2 column using the other date format. So for that, I use the pass component. I'm going to pass first the value, and I'm going to pass it to a date, and the format is like this one but without the time aspect. Oh, undo that. Like that. And we can see we've got a warning here that says 123 cells in the column value had an invalid format for the type date. And that's right, because we know that some of those are invalid. Remember, there's 100 rows in total, so there's 200 rows after we've done the transpose. So that's fine. We're going to ignore that warning because we were expecting that. And we can see now that the values, everything that's in that format has been passed to a date. And we'll do the same again for our value 2 column. So pass value 2. Again, we'll put this to a date. And this time we want to do, so those other fields, you remember in the US date format, which is, let me get this right, month, day, year, I believe. Let's see. Yep, so warning 77 cells in the column 2. So 77 plus the 123 from the previous warning means that we've now got all of our cells formatted into a date format. So again, that was an expected warning, so we can press ignore to make that warning disappear. And now what we need to do is cross-tab these values back to get the dates received and resolved back as fields, and we need to get rid of all of these nothing values. And I think we can do that in one step, he says. Let's have a go. So we do CrossTab. So we need to group by the complaint ID, the name field, and then we take the, oh no, wait a second, this isn't going to work. We need to, right, now we need to combine those two back into a column again. So before we can do this, we need to do another transpose. Again, key column is complaint ID, and name. So now it brings all of those value fields into a single field. And now at this point we can, so we've got a warning because we've got two name fields. Again, we can use this on problems to ignore that warning. That's fine in this case. So now I can filter out, so use the filter component where value is not nothing. So that brings us back to the 200 rows, which is where we want it to be, and you'll notice now all of these values are in a sane date format, which is exactly what we wanted. So now we can do the CrossTab to bring them back into their original. So this is throwing the data back around the other way. Group by complaint ID. The names is the name field. The values, we can just take the first value from the value field, I think. There we go. So we've got complaint ID, date resolved, date received, and then we just want to join that back. Because I selected those out at the start. If we join that back to our original data, join on, so inner join on complaint ID. Great, so we've got 100 rows there. We've got the correct dates here on the right hand side. So all we need to do now is drop those two. In fact, we could do that. Yeah. So if we come off here, we can remove those columns that we're going to update. So if we remove date received and date resolved, make that the new input there. So that's removed those two there, and if we go across the right hand side, we've got our new fields here, date resolved, date received. So now they're in proper date format, we can now do the filter. So we want only rows where date resolved happens to be after the date, date resolved happens after the date received. So that's just a filter. So column date resolved, so after is greater than the date received, and there is our answer. Except it's not quite our answer, and there's a little bit more to this story. So I mean, I have practiced this before I recorded the video, and what we find here is there's 50 rows in this date set, and you'll notice, in fact you can't see it, if I bring this text up here on the right hand side, what we're expecting to have is 53 rows in the final output. And this confused me for a while. I went back to the raw data and I went back and forth. So let's jump back to the raw data now and take a look. And what it comes back to is this problem I talked about at the start, that some of these dates are Excel dates. So if we look at this one in particular, this is an Excel date. And can I format the date in Google Sheets? Let's have a look. So if I was to format it to a custom date and time and choose something that's got the month in, so that date you can see in the background is 3/10/2023. So if I choose this date and just apply that, so that's saying that is stored in Excel. It is the 10th of March 2023. If I undo that, so the problem is that some of these dates were US format, some were European format, and when they got pasted into Excel, all the ones that were ambiguous, so where the date could be interpreted either way because the days was less than or equal to 12, they got interpreted in the wrong format and was stored in Excel as the wrong format. So knowing that, we can go back into our Enso workflow and we can go back here, and so these dates are actually transposed between the days and the months. So if I switch this format round to DD So switch those over. You'll see that update and gets us to the 53 rows that matches the 53 rows in the expected answer. So a little bit tricky, took a little bit of investigation to work out what was going on there. I'll be interested to see how other tools handle the difference in Excel, but that is the end. So that was Prepping Data week 25, solved in Enso. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.